Welcome to Beyond Leading, the podcast that cuts through the noise to get real about leadership, team dynamics, personal growth, and the messy, brilliant reality of work, life, and everything in between. Each episode brings grounded insights, sharp truths, and honest conversations from experienced coaches and leaders as we explore what it really takes to lead well today. We don't deal in one-size-fits-all answers. We spark ideas, offer grounded perspective, and create space for you to work out what fits your world. And every episode comes with a free fact sheet to help you take the ideas further. Just use the link in the show notes or visit beyond-leading.captivate.fm/episode fact sheet. In today's episode, we're opening the door on what leadership really feels like at the top. Not the polished version, but the human one. Because behind every CEO title sits a person navigating uncertainty, expectation, and doubt, just like the rest of us. We talk about what it means to lead when you don't have all the answers, how vulnerability can build trust rather than weaken authority, and why communication, honest, thoughtful, and audience-aware, can be the difference between a team that feels safe and one that slowly slips away. Along the way, we explore delegation, pressure, and the quiet loneliness that often comes with carrying responsibility for others. Joining me is Nick Sellers, and for her first appearance on Beyond Leading, owner of EP Talent Search and executive coach Ellen Putz, who is based in the Netherlands. Ellen, let's start off. In terms of CEOs, from your experience, what are their biggest leadership dilemmas?
First of all, a CEO is a position, it's a job, and you're a human being. So like anybody else, it's imposter syndrome, doubting yourself, being good enough, feeling like you're a fraud. People think you know it all, but you don't know it all because you're human. I think that's the biggest challenge for any CEO, for any person in general, but especially if you're leading a group of people, them to trust you. And how do you create that? And that is a lot of self-doubt. There's a lot of self-doubt involved. That is the biggest challenge.
That's quite comforting to hear for people in an organization, but probably also a bit disconcerting too, because the person who is heading things up, you would expect to come into the role brimming with confidence, heaps of experience, all the rest of it. And yet what you've introduced this episode with is the fact that they're human just like the rest of us. So how does a leader deal with that dilemma, with that challenge that they face, that they're human just like the rest of us?
First of all, stop trying to be a perfectionist, because that's one of the biggest challenges. Am I doing it right? Everybody's looking up to me thinking I know it all, and I don't know it all. Nobody knows it all. Having a great coach, just even for venting sessions, will really help them, getting awareness of your limiting beliefs, of where you're coming from, and knowing your talents, lean on them, make them into strength. But you don't do that overnight, right? We all need some help. We all need somebody next to us where we can vent our insecurities, our self-doubt. It's a huge task, being up there, people looking up to you, thinking. Whatever question we have, he or she will have the answer. And we don't. Nobody does. Not all the answers.
So the temptation can be to seem invulnerable because we are the leader. We are the person that's been selected to head up the whole organization. But that probably then leads to misunderstandings, miscommunication, not strong relationships. And so does vulnerability come into that kind of establishing of the person?
Absolutely. Because, showing up as a human being, what people want, what people need. There's a survey from Gallup Alec knows all about it too. And the survey and what they found out is that what people want from their leaders is hope, trust, compassion, and stability. And the first one is hope. How can you give people hope if you don't know who you are? People expect from you, and you can't please everybody, right? So that personal leadership is so important. Being aware of your limiting beliefs, of a past, how do you communicate, talents, how do you make them into strengths? Vulnerable. Let people know you're open. Questions, I'm open to criticism. The company, I'm part of the company. I'm leading the company and really create a safe space where everybody can thrive. I'm productive because happy people are productive people, right?
Just stepping back on that, Ellen, and just thinking about hope. And what I thought was interesting from the Gallup report is that Generation Z typically are looking for much more hope from leaders. But just stepping back from that, and when you mentioned there about maybe imposter syndrome or, the kind of worrying about are they good in their job, how they might come across, do you think part of what might be happening is that there are leaders that are desperate to be liked? And then that moves on to, is like or respect more important for a CEO? Or can you get a balance? Or is that even a valid question?
I don't even believe that it's all about Gen Z. I think it's people in general. That generation is voicing their needs far more. Where we were brought up like, don't say anything, go with the flow, obligations. And that generation is more voicing it and actually helping us, our generation. More vulnerable, and just ask for what you need. Ask what you need from your leader. It's new if a leader is, generation to adapt to. And then they start questioning themselves, am I doing it right? I got criticized. That was not the normal. You don't criticize the boss. Everything is open. Everything is open now. You are allowed to say anything, especially in Dutch culture. We are very opinionated, and we are allowed to. So it's not just a generational thing; it's a cultural thing too. You're a CEO or a managing director because that's the difference too. Are you working in a family-owned company? The every company are different. Are the owners still in the background? Is there private equity involved? Where's the private equity coming from in the world? On expectations, there's so many influences.
But going back to like and respect and thinking about maybe the concerns of senior leaders, I need to be liked. And if I'm not liked, then that's knocking my confidence. Because I know others would say, actually, respect is more important than like.
As a human being, we all want to be liked. That's the basic need. We want to be heard, we want to be seen, and we want to be liked. But you build a wall around it, right? Because you don't want to hear people not liking you. And you give the arrogant answer because that's self-protection. Because it's hurtful to know. And that is what usually is happening. And they come across as arrogant. And they're usually not. They're covering up. They're covering up their vulnerability. Because they don't like to be criticized. We don't like to be criticized. Nobody likes to be criticized. Right? We start defending ourselves. And then when people tell you, don't be offended. But you're attacking me, right? In my world, if you criticize me, you are attacking me. So people naturally defend themselves. And in that hierarchy, higher up, people expect stability. Same situation, you have a family, and you need to have a balance. And they expect you to be there with all the answers, and you can't. And then everything going on in the world makes people very insecure. Very insecure. So that puts even more pressure on the leaders. What's happening? What will be the impact on the company? What will happen to my job? And they might not even have the answer. So how do you give people hope? That's where the hope is coming from in the research. In this day and age, with everything going on in the world, people need hope. And they want their leaders to give it to them. But they're in the same world, right? They have the same questions, the same worries. So if there was no war in this world, we would have brilliant leaders. There would be less worries on a personal level. Because the human beings, they have the same worries as everybody else have. It's a position, it's a job. And if they let it become their lives, they end up burned out. They always end up when nobody is expecting them to burn out, right? They always were arrogant in their answers. People thought he or she does not hear what we're asking. They're just working for themselves on the management team. They don't care about us. And they run into a burnout and nobody saw it coming. Still happening. The expectations on that level are high. So how do you get across in company that you are approachable, you're vulnerable, do want to understand the needs of your colleagues? Because that's the first one. Do you understand what people need? That does not mean you always have the solutions. You can't do it right for everybody in a company. But people want to be heard and seen and understand what the company needs. It's so simple, right?
One of the approaches that, and I'm thinking about things at a corporate level, you mentioned like family-run businesses, there may be a difference there. But in a corporate environment, quite often the company will do an employee survey. They will ask for feedback. They will process the feedback. They will report it to the board, to the senior managers, but then nothing seems to happen. And it appears to me that you may well ask for feedback, but I guess the people that work for the business need to know that the feedback's been heard and used in a way. There's a leadership challenge, I would suppose, that actually now that you've asked, how are you going to deliver on what you've asked for?
Absolutely. And that is being trustworthy, right? Otherwise, people will not even participate in these surveys and say up front, why do we even do that? Because it's for the board. See, we did a survey, we listened to them, but do you implement? That is trust, building trust. And if you can't implement some of the things that are important to your employees, talk about it. You know, we don't have the funds, we can't do it right now, but we will do it in stages and bring it down to management levels and make it uniform in the way they talk to their teams about the needs, on the follow-up, where are we in funding, what steps do we take, have a timeline, have a plan, so people know they're doing something. Even if it's not right away, but we heard you, we've listened, and we're going to do something about it. And this is our timeline within the limitations and the funds we have available.
And I'm guessing that it doesn't have to be a corporate environment. That can happen in a business of any size.
Absolutely.
It sounds as though having open, honest dialogue, communication going on.
Yeah.
Leading from that, and referring to the Gallup report, it was very interesting. It said, if we think about the best leaders, it says, quote, the best leaders achieve success despite varied roles, organizations and industries by focusing on their behaviors within 7 expectations. You've talked about number 1, which is building relationships. But one of the problems I'm certainly, and others seem to experience in many companies, is that when it comes to developing people, which is number 2 on the list, making them be more effective, driving their technical and non-technical skill sets, motivation, giving them coaching, this is the part that we hear many senior leaders and CEOs are saying, well, and I'll give you the example in legal, well, we're only interested in any development that drives billable hours. We're not interested in leadership development and other non-technical development. But what I find with that is that not having a much longer term negative impact, because we're not giving the people the skills they need. And instead, we're just getting the same problems day after day after day because we're not addressing them.
It's not a long-term investment, right? It is not. Because people are far more productive if they can work on their talents, if they can have the ability to develop. So you need to create an understanding. If people enjoy what they're doing, they're far more productive. That is making money. I've been seen, I've been heard. I got the opportunity to develop myself, makes me a happy person, makes me seen, makes me heard, makes me trust, gives me hope. They get far more work done. So how do you get them to listen to exactly that? It's not just training on making more money. It's making them feel good about their job, enjoying their job, becoming the best version in their job, giving them opportunities to grow. Not just in finance or not just in legal, but as a human being.
But from your conversations, why do you think there is some pushback on that at that level? That they say, well, we're just not going to do that. It's not a priority.
Because they are not convinced that it's a return on investment. Where do we put the funding? How do we explain to our investors where the money went? But if you can get the message across that they will be more productive, and that is making money, that it's connected, and that is with private equity far more difficult than in family-owned companies, because that is far more about people, about connection, than it is in large multinationals, especially private equity, and especially with everything going on in the world, especially in machinery business. They took hits, big hits on their order intakes. So why should we invest in development? We need to make money. But especially in those times where people get insecure about, do I still have a job next year? With everything going on, productivity even slows down more.
There's two thoughts I'd like to share with you. One is what Alec mentioned there about billable hours, and it really dehumanizes what work is about and looks squarely at numbers. So whether it's somebody in finance, whether it's somebody in the legal profession, it's the perfect application of KPIs that actually nothing else matters except the numbers, and it dehumanizes the workplace, which can't have long-term prospects. You're just going to have a cycle of bringing people in to replace the ones that didn't stay.
Yes.
It also strikes me, the other observation I would make is that some of the best leaders I've observed are the ones who can have two faces. I'll explain this. The face towards the investors, that here are the numbers that you were looking for, but then a face towards their people which says, I'll find the money to invest in you. And it seems to me as though leadership can be a juggling act between the audiences that you've got, that you have to face up to the audience and the audience's expectations so that you get the applause every time you perform. But it's a different message that goes out depending on the audience, but you do have to deliver. How does that sound?
Communication, right, Alec? It's all about knowing how to communicate your message to what audience to achieve what you want to achieve.
So my observation is that good leaders know how to do it, but leaders that are not experienced will sing a great song towards the investors because they have to meet up with them regularly and they know that they hold all the cards. But then towards the staff, they give a dry, vanilla version of what went to the investors. They don't change the words of the song. They don't sing to a different tune unless they're very mature in what they're about, unless they've really invested in understanding what people need to hear and need to experience as well.
There's two areas that come to mind. Number one is navigating, I could call it office politics, because you've got to think, what is the communication you're giving to different people and what is it they want to hear or needs to hear? We're not saying to lie, but it's about how you get that communication out there. But actually, there's another part of that, delivering that communication through inspiration, inspiring others that, yes, I'm talking to the external stakeholders in a certain way. I'm talking to my internal stakeholders, my staff, in another way, but you are showing both parties you're in control. You know what's going on, you know what needs to be done, and you're giving recognition to the relevant parties.
Right. And you're not fibbing, lying, being economical with the truth or anything like that. You're actually simply communicating in the most meaningful way with each of the audiences. And that is quite a dance to dance, isn't it, when you're in a leadership position?
And it takes personal leadership, knowing yourself, trusting yourself in your own talents, use them. and probably some experience, making mistakes, learn from your mistakes in the past, done it wrong, have seen the effect and learned from it. If you're first time CEO, you will make mistakes. You will make mistakes because you're proud, because you're in this new position and you want to do it right. And then you make mistakes and you get disappointed. I did my best and I've tried to please everybody and now nobody's pleased. Oh, it takes time, it takes maturing. It takes experience and self-reflection, self-awareness. What could I have done differently? What can I do the next time to get the message across in the right way? And you can't please everybody. Sometimes you have to bring a negative message, but show your vulnerability, that it's not you doing that. You want the best for everybody. And you will get followers, even if it's a negative message. Don't be arrogant. Know your audience, know the company you're working in. Have a deep understanding of your role. Have a deep understanding of your obligations and the expectations that come with it.
I think what we're starting to see now is that there are so many different balls that the senior leader or CEO has got to juggle. Are you seeing, Ellen, from your experience, do you feel there's enough trust from the CEO or the MD to delegate, to take more work off them, so they're getting that time to self-reflect and think, looking at the bigger picture, thinking how I communicate with various different stakeholders? And the reason I'm asking that is because with many of my senior leading clients, that seems to be the biggest issue. There's a lack of trust to delegate, and they keep taking more and more work on, which I say to them, but why are you not delegating that to your team? Why are you doing it? And it comes down to, will they do as good a job? But even a couple of them say to me, can I delegate? It seems to be either a reluctance to delegate or, can I delegate?
If you ask them that it's an accusation, right? You're not doing it right. Why are you doing that? If a CEO has climbed up the ladder in a company and did some of the jobs, they tend to start micromanaging. It's hard to get to that next level. So if you bring people in, experienced people from completely different industries, that is already easier because they need the teams. They need the expertise of everybody to be successful. So it's even harder for somebody becoming a CEO, being very proud of the career move up, and then finding out it's difficult because you know the people, they were your colleagues in some kind of business unit. You know exactly what the job is like. We had this conversation before, right? And you see things going wrong or seeing things being done differently than you would do them. Stay away from it. But that is the hardest thing because you want to be successful. First-time CEO wants to be successful in his own career, right? So they fail a few times before they find out it's not about me. I have to make other people successful. We share the success. And I just put my arms around them, guard them, give them a safe space, and let them make their mistakes. They learn from it, just like they did themselves. And if they're vulnerable, they will admit to it. Don't worry. We've all done it wrong first before we knew exactly how to do it right. It's like when little children try to ride a bike. You fall a few times, but if you keep helping them with those little side wheels, they will never learn. It's no different in adult life. Career does not have to be perfect.
So there has to be a need for self-accountability then.
But there always is, right, in every role, not just in a leadership role too.
This has been quite interesting as I think back over the last few minutes that we've been talking. We've talked on topics that normally we might have associated with people who are more junior, further down in their careers: imposter syndrome, vulnerability, delegation, accountability, and so forth. So it seems as though there's a theme here which is not purely focused on the CEO, but is focused on anyone who's in a development path for leadership. That actually there are things that you'll experience at one level that you may well experience again at another level, simply because you're now stepped into a new place that you're not familiar with. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. And you have different stakeholders. And we always tend to forget it's lonely at the top. You hear about that, but it is because the expectations from all the people, all the workforce, expectations are high. The expectations are so high, but you're still a human being. And you need the compliment too. You need somebody to tell you you did it right. Thank you. Thank you for being there. Instead of just saying, why didn't you do that? And our COO does not listen to us. And you think, I do listen, but I can't please everybody. So having communication training and that level, being very aware of your audience and what is the message, and did they get the message right? The communication is the biggest, most important thing as a CEO. Yeah. How do you communicate? And yet the CEOs are often the worst in communicating, finding the right words, finding the right people to communicate something. Because if it's a good message, I want to be on the stage telling it. Give somebody else the podium to share that. It's lonely at the top. It really is.
But we still need to be behind the scenes then. Because I think what I'm picking up from what you said there, a great leader is sitting behind the scenes, and actually it's their team that are being moved up front. They're the ones that should be up front. The great leader sits at the back.
Yeah, because you don't have a daily task anymore, right? You're not responsible for a certain part of the organization. Yep. You're responsible for the whole group. You need to protect them. You need to give them a podium. Give them trust. Trust me. I'm here for you. I'm here to serve the company. We're all in it together. Yeah, I have a huge responsibility to other stakeholders because the investors will ask me, why are the numbers down this month? And I need to protect you if they think we need to lay off people. Like some private equity, Asian and Americans are very keen on doing. The numbers go down for 1 month, we lay off people. We cut costs, and that is usually human capital. How do you protect your people and say, no, we're not going to do that? Because the business goes up and down quarterly, and we will get back to that level. That is protecting your people, yet at the same time taking a huge risk on your own position. People are not often aware of. The workforce is not aware of the risks sometimes you're taking because you cannot communicate all these things because everybody gets nervous. And yet they are not aware of your sleepless nights. And when they accuse you of something you're not doing right, it can be very, very upsetting as leader in a company because you did your utmost. You defended them. You protected them. And yet they still accuse you of not doing something right. You cannot communicate everything. But if they would know it all, if they would have a camera into your life for a month, knowing the challenges at the top, they would not be so full of criticism. That is the position you've chosen. You wanted that position, and it comes with a lot of challenges.
I think that brings in another element of dilemma. We started off this conversation talking about leadership dilemmas, but that brings in another, that not every conversation that takes place can be shared with everybody. So you're absolutely right. What the investors are looking for is one set of metrics, and the CEO may well have to defend a position that runs counter to their ambitions simply because they've got a different view. They've got a longer term view rather than a short term fix. Yep. And similarly, what the employees of a company might think is a simple thing to say yes to, the CEO can't say yes to that because they know of other conversations going on. But it does bring back in those words that you guys used, because you've read the Gallup report, things like hope and trust and things like that. So it feels a bit like the CEO, as you said a moment ago, Ellen, is a lonely place and there are pressures on every side. And you also mentioned earlier in the conversation about the role of a coach. Now, I don't bring this in because it's self-serving on our part. We're all coaches, so we know that we get involved in conversations where somebody that's senior will be venting on something. They will be running through options that they perhaps wouldn't have a conversation with anybody else about. And so the outlet that a coach provides can be an incredibly valuable asset for any leader, whether it's a CEO or anybody else in a leadership position.
If it only was for venting, I need to vent, I need to let it out in a safe place where nobody has an opinion. Nobody will tell you, oh, you were in a bad mood. No, I just needed to vent and get back on track. How important is this? How important was it really? What happened? Why did it make you so angry? What they said. And mostly it's this, because I worked very hard and I did my utmost and they're still not satisfied. It's not what they did, right? It's your emotion. How do you deal with it? So usually when I do coaching and leadership training, I take it over a year, right? We meet on a 2-weekly or monthly basis. How is it going? What happened in company? And we'll take it into little baby steps. What if you would try to approach it this way? What could go wrong? Have these little trials. And usually they end up being very satisfied. It worked very well. Because you don't want your leader, people in the leadership roles, to go into burnouts and be replaced by the next one and then the next one. Because that is instability in company. So investing in some coaching for the leadership is very important because it's lonely. Just because it's lonely.
Okay, we're coming to the end. Any final thoughts, Ellen? Key takeaways for our listeners?
For help. We all need help. We all need someone to vent to in a safe place. Leadership role can be a very lonely role. High expectations. Do you meet them? You never ever meet them. So the challenge of leadership, it's lonely. Get help. Create a safe space where you can vent. Be the best version of yourself when you're in company. Yeah.
I was just going to offer, Alec, that it seems to me being clear in communication, saying what we mean and meaning what we say is vital in every direction, at every level, in business and in life.
Completely agree. And I know for me, what I pick up, just again from the experience, but you've done that venting, you've had someone to speak to, but also we need that time for quiet self-reflection. There's just so much going on. We need to step out every now and again and just think, right, where are we? What have we learned? Where are we going? And I think we forget to do that. We get so consumed, we forget to do that. And that starts to cause a longer term issue. Ellen and Nick, thank you very much indeed. And until next time.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Beyond Leading, the podcast that cuts through the noise to get real about leadership, team dynamics, personal growth, and the messy, brilliant reality of work, life, and everything in between. Don't forget to sign up for your episode fact sheet at beyond-leading.captivate.fm. You'll also find the link in the show notes, and we'll email it straight to you. If today's conversation sparked something for you, please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform and share this episode with a colleague or friend. Please join us again for more conversations that challenge the status quo, spark real growth, and help you lead beyond the title and everything in between. And if you'd like to support the podcast, we'd love it if you left us a quick review on your podcast provider or on Podchaser. It really helps others find the show.